Hey, good morning guys. Thank you so much for watching my video. My name's Philip. This is the Driver Side Chats. And I first want to start off by saying if there's anything you'd like me to talk about, let me know. And I'll try to do a little subject on it. But today's topic, I thought about maybe revisiting Baby Step 7. Today's just not the day for it. Something else has been on my mind and I just kind of want to talk about it. In regards to my current lifestyle and the way that my wife and I live and the things that we do, which is living like no one else, so that later we can live like no one else. We're in the process. We're in the market for a house. We're not necessarily trying to buy a house tomorrow, but when the right one comes along, we'll be ready to buy it whenever that time is. And at this point, I don't know when it's going to be. And there's a lot of unknowns in the equation. So here's the thing that's kind of difficult for us right now. We're still very young. We're in our early 20s and we're saving as best we can for a house. However, the savings are not going as fast as we'd like them to, because we've got a lot of other things right now that we're trying to get figured out and trying to save for, and things that are coming up that are just out of our control. But the market that we're looking at right now, what we can comfortably afford and that wouldn't really kill us in our budget any more than what we're already paying, we're looking at a certain price range. And it's a lower price range right now. There are not a lot of, I got to be careful how I say this, but there are not a lot of nice houses in the range we're looking at. In fact, haven't found one that's completely perfect with the square footage that we like. In that kind of ballpark price. We found one, but it was really a dump house and it just needed so much work that it wouldn't even be worth our time or money. We're kind of, the house that we really want is probably about $30,000 to $40,000 more than what we're budgeting right now, which is a ton of money, and probably I'd say we could afford it if we really wanted the house, if we really wanted to go that route. Don't think we'd have any real issues getting the house, but at the same time, there are a lot of things going on right now that we're trying to prepare for. With 2 high-mile cars, to me that's a big one, just because I know I'm the car guy, and so that's always a thought in my mind. But with 2 high-mile cars, you just never know when something like that's going to happen, something that you're going to need. So for that reason, we've got to be putting a lot of money away for a car too, just in case the unexpected happened and we needed to replace our car like tomorrow. So that is the unfortunate thing. We can't put as much money as we would have liked towards this project, but I know that in time, that'll probably be something that we look back on and say it was a good thing to do. Saying all of that and giving you all this access to my personal information, here's what I want maybe to be learned, is that right now there are sacrifices being made. Sure, we could go buy a more expensive house, one that is outside of our current price range, and we wouldn't have to put as much money down to be able to afford it. We could afford the payment, and even if we had to pay PMI, we could afford to do so. And that's where you got to draw a line. There are people who say, I can afford to buy this, so I will. And there are people who say, I can afford this, but right now I need to hold off because financial responsibility would say you need to use this money elsewhere, or you need to save it for other things that could potentially arise. So in saying that, I would love to pull the trigger on a nicer house, and like I said, it's something that could be afforded, but I've got to be patient, and I've got to understand that right now I'm living a life to live like no one else, so that one day I can live like no one else. And that's a huge concept. It's a hard concept easy concept to grasp, really hard concept to live. If you're really having to sacrifice about some of the things that you want now. I grew up in the kind of family where if we needed something, it was not a big deal to be able to go and buy it. But unfortunately, I don't have that luxury being on my own. Not yet. But one day I will. And one day there will be financial success. Right now, I'm planning for financial success. I'm living financially successful. But it's so much harder than what you would think. It's so much harder than what the mind expects when you're actually going into this world. When you're trying to plan for your wealth building, you're making these sacrifices. It sounds all good when you get to hear about it, but when you actually go out and do it, it's so much more difficult. So I say all of this to be an encouragement. It's difficult. To live like no one else now is so hard, because everything and everybody wants your business. They want your money. They want to sell you stuff. They want you to finance. They want you to do all of this kind of stuff that is just, it's so easy to do because I can afford it. You know, $20 a month, I can afford that for that stereo system. You know, a $400 car payment, I can afford that. $1,300 more, I can afford that. And by the time you keep saying, if you keep saying that, I can afford that, I can afford that, and you keep buying things that you can, quote, afford, all of a sudden, all of these things that you were able to afford, you've bought them and now you can't really afford them. Or you've got to live on literally rice and beans because all your money is going out to other debts. And, you know, I'm not necessarily against having any kind of debt. I don't think it's a wise decision depending on what kind of debt you're getting into. But, you know, when you're talking about being 90% of your income is just to pay off debt and required expenses, I mean, it gets kind of tight and it puts you in a very tight spot. Another thing to consider that really would free up our world significantly, and this is the hard thing too to think about, is retirement savings. Right now we're doing 15% of our income towards retirement, and that is so hard because depending on what your income is, I mean, put it this way, and I'm just saying a number. If you make $5,000 a month, I'm not going to say you're wasting it because you're not wasting it, but at $5,000 of gross income, that's $750 a month that you're putting away for retirement. So every month, that's $750 that you could be using for the house payment or the car payment. And I mean, it's just all it is going into retirement. You cannot touch it, at least not without penalties or, you know, a lot of other things that we don't like. That is a difficult thing to have to swallow, especially if there's a certain lifestyle you really want to live now. And I totally get it, because right now we're doing 15% of our income, and honestly, I'm not going to complain about the tithe, because we're required to tithe and we should give and joy, and it's something that we do. But then to think about another 10%, and mentally it can be hard to swallow. Especially again, if you're talking about, you know, 25% of a $5,000 income, that's $1,250 a month just going into retirement, and then the tithe. Then to think if you're in the 25% tax bracket, it makes it even harder to swallow, because all of a sudden 50% of your gross paycheck is out the window. So that $5,000 income becomes $2,500 if you're doing it the Dave Ramsey way, of course. And I'm not saying this, I'm not knocking paying taxes. I'm not talking about bad about paying tithe, or giving tithe rather, because those are things that we need to do. Render unto Caesar's what is Caesar's, and God asks for 10%. You know, those are things as Christians we ought to be doing. But if you really try to think about it and kind of wrap your mind around it, it can be a pretty big pill to swallow. But in all of this, here's an important thing to remember, is be content. You know, right now you're living a life that no one else is living, and one day that life will pay off. You know, right now it's hard, but as long as your needs are being met, be content. Paul said, in whatsoever state I am, I will be content. And that's paraphrased, but Paul was thrown in prison. He was treated terribly. But when it all came down to it, he said, it doesn't matter, no matter whatever state I'm in. If I'm in prison, you know, my needs are being met. And so I'm going to be content. And so taking that, and I know, there might be people that could be watching that aren't Christians, and I'm not here to throw religion into you. That's not the purpose of this channel, but I am a religious person, so I will express a few things here and there. If we can learn to be content, then down the road when we have so much more, our contentment will be multiplied. Money has a tendency to multiply whoever the human being is. If you're a jerk when you're poor, when you're really rich, you're going to be a really, really big jerk. If you're really humble as a poor person, you're going to be a really, really humble person. If you're content as a poor person, one day when you're really, really rich, I don't think you'll have any problem giving to charities or helping other people out in need. So, just some life lessons, maybe some things to think about. Money is not everything. And I know that this channel deals a lot with finances, a whole lot with finances. You just got to remember to stay content with where you're at and what you're doing, because eventually the hard work pays off. It's hard to see it in the start. When I'm only a year in and my investments are only making, my interest is only pulling me a couple $100 a year, you know what? It's a start, and it's not seeing a lot of things right now. You just got to remember, stay in the game, persevere, and it'll all happen in its own time. And over 40 years, it'll get there. But that'll conclude today's video. Thanks guys for watching. I hope y'all have a great weekend. It's going to be a great Friday, but we'll see you next time.